At some point in the manhwa never tells you exactly when, Jin-woo stopped being a person. This video is about finding that moment. Everyone who has read Solo Leveling remembers the transformation. The weak kid who couldn't survive a C-rank dungeon becomes the most powerful being to ever walk the earth. And the manhwa frames this as triumph, as the ultimate power fantasy. But here's what the story is actually doing, and I don't think most readers catch it. The manhwa isn't telling a story about a man becoming powerful. It's telling a story about a man disappearing. Jin-woo, as he existed in Chapter 1, does not survive this story. He is methodically, chapter by chapter, replaced by something that wears his face, remembers his memories, loves his family, but operates on a completely different substrate of identity. And the disturbing part? The narrative rewards this. The readers cheer for it. We cheer for it. Today, we're going to figure out why, and what that says about how Solo Leveling actually works as a story. We're also going to identify the exact chapter where the old Jin-woo dies. Not metaphorically, structurally. Who was Jin-woo in Chapter 1? Before we talk about who Jin-woo becomes, we need to be precise about who he was. Because this is where most Solo Leveling analysis gets lazy. People describe early Jin-woo as weak, as if that's a character trait. It's not. Weakness is a condition. What matters is how he responds to it. Early Jin-woo has 3 defining psychological traits that are almost entirely absent in the later arcs. First, he experiences shame. Jin-woo is embarrassed by his rank, by how people look at him, by his mother's illness and his inability to help. He feels the gap between who he is and who he wishes he were, and it hurts him. That pain is visible in his body language, in the way he talks to other hunters, in his willingness to take degrading jobs just to keep raiding. This is crucial. Shame requires a self-concept. You can only be embarrassed if you care about what others think, if other people's perception of you matters to your internal identity. The Shadow Monarch does not experience shame. Not because he's confident, but because he has genuinely stopped caring how he is perceived. The gap closed, not because he closed it, but because the part of him that measured the gap ceased to exist. Second, early Jin-woo fears death. That sequence in the double dungeon works because his fear is real. We feel it. The reader's heart rate goes up because Jin-woo's does. By the late arcs, Jin-woo confronts beings capable of ending the world and feels nothing. Characters around him register this as composure, as courage. But courage requires the presence of fear that you're choosing to act through. What Jin-woo has in the late arcs isn't courage. It's the absence of fear. Those are completely different things, and only one of them is a human emotional state. Third, early Jin-woo has preferences, small ones. He likes particular foods. He has a sense of humor, dry, self-deprecating. He has a complicated relationship with his sister. He is embarrassed by his feelings for Cha Hae-in in a way that feels genuinely adolescent and real. These preferences aren't plot relevant, and that's exactly why they matter. They exist because the author wanted you to know that a person lives inside this story. Someone specific. Hold that image of him in your mind. The guy who gets embarrassed, who's afraid, who likes specific things. We're going to need it later, because by the end of this video, I want you to look at a panel of the Shadow Monarch and ask yourself honestly, is that the same person? The system as identity surgery. Here's the thing about the system that nobody talks about. It's not a power-up mechanic. It's a replacement program. Think about what the system actually does to Jin-woo. Not in terms of strength, but in terms of how it restructures his relationship to himself. Before the system, Jin-woo makes decisions like a human being. He weighs risk. He consults his feelings. He asks, can I survive this? Should I do this? What happens to my sister if I die? After the system, Jin-woo makes decisions like an optimized process. The system doesn't just give him missions, it gives him a framework for deciding what matters. And the framework has no category for things that matter because they feel meaningful. It only has categories for complete, incomplete, reward, penalty. Over hundreds of chapters, Jin-woo runs his entire inner life through this framework. And here's where it gets philosophically uncomfortable. If you consistently outsource the question of what to do to an external system, if every decision about risk, priority, and value is filtered through a UI that tells you what the correct action is, what happens to your capacity to generate your own values from the inside? Philosophers have a name for this. Kant called it heteronomy, having your will determined by something outside yourself rather than your own rational agency. It's the opposite of autonomy. What's fascinating about solo leveling is that the system is so obviously good. It makes Jin-woo stronger, keeps him alive, rewards his effort, that neither Jin-woo nor the reader ever interrogates what it's costing him. He trades heteronomy for power, and the trade feels so obviously correct that we never question it. But this is the mechanism. This is how he disappears. Not in one dramatic moment, not through trauma or loss, through the slow, consistent replacement of internally generated values with externally assigned objectives. The system doesn't corrupt Jin-woo. It's more subtle than that. It just makes him increasingly unnecessary to his own decisions. The Shadow Army and the Dissolution of Empathy. Let's talk about the Shadow Soldiers, because this is the element of solo leveling that I think does the most psychological work and gets analyzed the least. Jin-woo can extract the dead. He takes the corpses of his enemies, people who, minutes ago, were living beings with their own identities, and converts them into instruments of his will. They remember nothing. They want nothing. They exist only to serve. And Jin-woo names them Baru, Igris, Tusk. He gives them identities, but those identities are entirely defined by their relationship to him. Now here's the uncomfortable question the Manhwa never stops to ask. What does it do to a person, psychologically, to spend years commanding beings who have no independent will, who cannot refuse you, who cannot disagree, judge, or leave? There's a principle in developmental psychology. We become who we practice being in relationship. The way you relate to others, the power dynamics you inhabit daily, shapes your interior. A person who practices listening becomes a better listener. A person who practices empathy gets better at reading people. Jin-woo practices being an absolute sovereign, daily, for years. He practices relating to others as instruments rather than as agents. And when you do that long enough, when every relationship you have is structured around unconditional deference, your capacity to recognize genuine otherness in people starts to atrophy. Look at how Jin-woo relates to humans in the later chapters. He's not cruel. He's not indifferent in a monstrous way. But there's a gap, a glass partition between him and everyone around him. He can see them. He can care about them in an abstract sense, but he can't quite reach them anymore. And the Manhwa presents this as the inevitable cost of power, which it might be. But let's be honest about what that cost actually is. It's not losing friends, it's not loneliness. It's losing the ability to fully experience another person as real in the way they were real to you before. That's not a power upgrade. That's a form of brain damage. Earlier, I said we'd find the exact chapter where the old Jin-woo dies. Not metaphorically, structurally. Here it is. It's not a single chapter with a dramatic scene. That's what makes it so effective as a literary device, and so easy to miss. The death happens across a cluster of chapters in the mid to late arc when Jin-woo begins to access the Shadow Monarch's memories. Think about what it means to absorb the memories of an ancient cosmic entity. The Shadow Monarch has existed across timescales that make human history look like an afternoon. He has watched civilizations die. He has made decisions that ended worlds, and he made them calmly, because at his scale, worlds ending is not a tragedy. It's just weather. When Jin-woo absorbs those memories, when they become his memories, what happens to the scale at which he experiences things? His sister's exam results, a meal he used to like, the embarrassment of being E-rank, a conversation with Cha Hae-in where his palms went slightly sweaty. All of that still exists in his memory, but it exists next to memories of geological time, next to memories of the end of worlds. There's a concept in trauma psychology called perspective contamination, where a single experience so exceeds the scale of your ordinary life that it permanently distorts your ability to find meaning in ordinary things. Veterans experience versions of this. Survivors of catastrophic events do too. Jin-woo undergoes a version of this, except the contaminating experience isn't trauma, it's becoming. It's voluntarily merging with a consciousness so vast that human emotional scale simply cannot survive the integration. The old Jin-woo doesn't die in a fight. He doesn't die at a moment of crisis. He dissolves, gradually, into something too large to contain him. And the story calls this victory. So why does this work? Because solo leveling is doing something very smart with reader psychology. It gives you access to Jin-woo's interiority early, his fear, his shame, his small preferences, precisely so that you bond with him. You identify with the person. You root for him. And then the Manhwa slowly, incrementally replaces him, keeping just enough surface-level continuity that you never get a moment to grieve. He still has the same face. He still protects his family. He still says the right things to the right people. But this is exactly how certain kinds of real loss work, isn't it? When someone you know changes very slowly, through illness, through trauma, through the accumulation of experiences you didn't share, there's often no clean moment of loss. There's just a gradual recognition, usually arriving too late, that the person you knew has been replaced by someone who shares their biography, but not their interior. Solo leveling makes you feel this, and then immediately redirects your attention to the next fight, the next power-up, the next enemy reveal. The action sequences are emotional misdirection. Not in a cynical way, they're genuinely thrilling. But their function, structurally, is to give you something exciting to feel precisely at the moments when the text is doing something quietly devastating. Remember the question I asked at the beginning? At what point did Sung Jin-woo stop being a person? Here's my answer. There wasn't a point. There was a process, and the process was designed to be invisible while it was happening, both to Jin-woo and to us. That's not a flaw, that's solo leveling doing exactly what it set out to do. Solo leveling gets dismissed a lot in serious manhwa circles as pure power fantasy. And on the surface, that's not wrong. But the best power fantasies, the ones that stick, usually have something underneath the wish fulfillment that the wish fulfillment is hiding. What's underneath solo leveling is a story about what it costs to become exceptional. Not in terms of sacrifice. Sacrifice is easy to dramatize, but in terms of personhood, in terms of the self that gets quietly displaced when you dedicate every resource to a single direction of growth. Jin-woo gets everything he wanted. He becomes unbeatable. He saves the people he loves. And somewhere in the process of doing that, the person who wanted those things in the first place, the specific, embarrassed, afraid, food-preferring human being from Chapter 1, got left behind. Whether that's a tragedy or a triumph is probably the most interesting question solo leveling never quite gets around to asking directly. But the text asks it anyway, in the space between who he was and who he became. That space is where the real story lives. If you want to see this kind of reading applied to another manhwa, the comment section is where I decide what comes next. Tell me what you want dissected. And if you haven't read Omniscient Reader's Viewpoint yet, stay subscribed. That one is going to need its own series.